All right, good morning. Thank you all for joining us here today. This is an update. Most of you know by now that Jefferson County Clerk's Office had identified some inherited clerical errors and some statewide system limitations that affected a small number of voters in the 2026 primary election, and from what we know, further back as well. So our office recently discovered that a 2021 clerical mistake by a former employee resulted in 30 voters living on the 4800th block of Red Dawn Drive being assigned the wrong precinct. Now, what that means is back in 2021, that would have been after redistricting, there would have been the Metro Council would have had to redistrict. And so they would have sent over different assignments to do the precincts. Someone would have had to key this in, kind of like a glorified expel sheet, and there was some type of clerical error. Since then, it's continued to build on itself. And so 8 of the voters that participated in the 2026 primary election were unable to cast a vote in the 44th House District race. Now, the reason I believe that's an issue is because that race was so close. It was within 5 votes. Now, while the error occurred long before our administration took office, I believe it's our responsibility to correct every single issue and be fully transparent with it. So I do want to emphasize that any voter on the 4800 block who registered or updated their voter registration after the 2021 clerical error that was put in place would have been properly assigned. It would have been the individuals during that period of time that had been put in wrong. So after the discovery of discrepancies, I've ordered a countywide audit of the precinct assignments. So we started off here coming in October of 2025. One of the first things we knew is the technology was grossly deficient here into it. And so we worked on first to stabilize this office and then worked to modernize the office. We ran a special election that went very well. But we were able to figure out a lot of problems and ways to improve the election process. The goal was to run a primary better than we've seen many of the elections in the past, so that people weren't stuck in long lines, that people could move through fast. This team worked their butt off at the Election Center, and I think things went very, very well. But it was brought to our attention that there are still some systematic errors and problems that have to be addressed. One of those errors has to do with the way that things have been set up and keyed in. But the other problem is an overview revealed that there's also there's significant limitations with the state's VRS system, and that's your voter registration system, and that's the State Board of Election. So these systematic issues have to be addressed. Now, I worked in the legislature before here. I was a senator. There's a task force. This isn't new. People know that there are limitations and problems. Unlike many states, we don't have a digitalized process in place to find and when there's real-time errors. The state legislature had passed that we would move to a GIS system for all of the county clerks. That has not been funded. I'm a member of the County Clerks Association. I went into it. We're not alone. But Jefferson County does have the resources now to be able to conduct a full audit. And I want to say that this is necessary. Some people think it's overkill, but if I know that there's one voter that's in one precinct outside of where they need to be, that has to be corrected. And the way the system is right now, the only way that I can do that is a house by house analysis. The way that the system is set up, if you do a street view onto it, it's still saying they're fine. But when you go into the individual households, if somebody has been keyed in wrong, it will show mismatch. And so I have a team back there working around the clock. We've sent a letter to the mayor's office informing the metro government of the problems and the limitations and the need to be able to this to be addressed. When I took this appointment in October, when I ran for office and was elected here last month, I made the promise of transparency. And part of that is to let you know what issues there are and how we're going to address them. This is time intensive, it's costly, but it's necessary, and I believe that we have to lead the way for the state. What I wanted them to know is that as the clerk's office continues to expand on the audit, we'll continue to let you know what's going on. I do want to thank Louisville Public Media. They worked with us on several things. They brought several issues to our attention. I want to thank members of my constituents who called and said, hey, Mr. Yates, our office, I received this ballot when I think I should have received this ballot. I want to thank all the partners who's willing to step up and make sure it's perfect. Now, I do want to be clear that every registered voter who went in to vote, their vote gets to be counted. But this is important in your local races, because in the event that we drew lines, legislative district lines, and we said a precinct's supposed to be in the 44th as opposed to something else, and you're put into a different one, while you may be able to vote for the higher races, you don't get to hold your local people accountable because they put you, if it's drawn on there. And to me, while it may have been fair for two candidates because they have the same voting pool to run against each other, I don't believe it's fair to the constituent, to the voter, if they can't hold their local person accountable because of the way that it's drawn. And so it goes back to something bigger than just 4 votes here, 6 votes there. It goes back to the integrity of our election system, which I believe is the bedrock of our democracy. And I will continue to let the people know that we will protect the integrity of our elections, and that we're going to have the highest level of organization. Did not know or anticipate that we would have to do a full house-by-house audit when I took this position. I know that, for instance, the voters in this 4,800 block of Red Dawn had voted in 6 elections since then. So we know there's been problems. But what I want to know is, can't change the past. But what we can do is move forward, and we can do this in a way that we can assure that every single person is in the correct precinct. Now, the reason I think this is important to bring forward is not only because it's costly and time intensive, but it's only as good as this hand-to-hand audit that I'm going to do right now. So I will make sure it's good for the November election. But what happens after that? The need is to have the fully updated system, this GIS system that the legislature said needed to put in place. The county clerks, every single county clerk is dealing with similar issues. Every single one. That's their number one issue. It's not fair that if it can't be properly assigned. And so we're lucky enough that we'll have the resources to be able to do this audit. It is absolutely imperative that this is funded so that it's every day new people are registering to vote. People are moving. People are changing. It has got to be updated in real time to make sure that it is correct. And we want to do it where it's fully transparent. So I will also be working with my colleagues in the legislature to make sure that we get funding for this so that we can ensure that not only Jefferson County everything is right, but throughout the Commonwealth of Kentucky. So we'll continue to work diligently to ensure every Jefferson County voter is signed correctly, every single ballot is done correctly, but we're also going to advocate because when we see a problem that we know not only affects Jefferson County, but throughout the Commonwealth of Kentucky, I think it's our job also to lead and work with them. Open up for any questions.
How costly is this?
Right now, if I have just a team of 8 people who have been pulled from all their other assignments who are doing this around the clock. We're looking to, with our current poll book provider, we reached out to SNS about bringing in some additional resources and cost. And because of the way the elections is run, we get reimbursed through the local government. And that's one of the reasons I wanted to put the mayor on notice, let him know that this is something that needs to be done. So we don't know what the total cost is going to be. Right now, what they're doing is they're bringing any red flags that we see as any type of discrepancies. Sometimes it'll come up as a mismatch, then it takes a deeper dive. And so what I need to do is put in a program that will let us know if anything's off in real time. And so going forward, if we can get this fully funded through the GIS, that it'll be through the Board of Election, working in conjunction with the state legislature, getting the money together, then it will be a shared cost throughout the Commonwealth of Kentucky. But I will not sit back and let Jefferson County have voters in the wrong precincts. I've been in this office a short period of time. I made a promise that I will do everything in my power to make things correct. And I'm going to be fully transparent as we move forward. The total cost, I don't know yet. Right now, we're absorbing it, but I can tell you we're absorbing it by taking all of my resources around the clock. and we're working hard to do that. So the letter to our mayor was my way of kind of padding that we're going to be needing some additional help.
When will you know how much it costs?
Well, we got a couple updates yesterday. They're going to give me some updates today. I'm hoping by the end of the week the end of next week that we'll have at least enough to send out a RFP to be able to get help. Right now, I still don't have the parameters in which to send out and make a request of cost. So I don't want to leave, send out and say, hey, start something with an open checkbook. Part of my other job is to be a good steward of our taxpayer money.
You said that all voters got to cast ballots, but what would you say directly to the voters in Wilder Park or in House District 44 who cast an incorrect ballot that didn't include either a House District race or a local Metro Council race that they should have been legally allowed to vote in?
So not just those, and I can tell you, looking back, I got a call from a former colleague of mine a few years ago. He lost a very close race, and he was like, "Have you looked into these? Have you looked into this?" So I'm obviously frustrated. This isn't new knowledge. We know that at the precinct level, sometimes that people will be assigned when they drew the district maps. Sometimes they cut the precincts in half. Sometimes you'll have households that are split. There's been agreements and deals in the past where we know for sure we have a certain amount of people on the line of Oldham and Bullitt County that may send their kids to Oldham County schools but are voting in Jefferson County elections. And we have lawsuits in those things. This has to be hammered out. This is part of a bigger issue. To some of the individuals sometimes that have voted 6 different times and not be able to hold their local politician at whatever level accountable, I think that they have been failed in some regard. And that's why somebody say, hey, David, this might be a waste of money. This is a waste of time, energy. I disagree. I think it's too important for us to sit back. Somebody has to do it. I've been lucky to be put in this position. I'm happy to lead this charge with the help of all our colleagues. And I'll tell you, I've been on the phone with a lot of other clerks. You've seen some stories. You have some when they talk about a coin flip and who moved what. It matters. Every single vote matters, especially at the local races. And at the local races, a lot of times have the most impact in your daily life. And so I'm going to work to make sure that not only is this done and made sure it's correct for November, but we've got to have a digital process in place to make sure that in real time that it continues to be corrected.
What's the timeline? You said by November, but what's the time? What do you?
Well, I've told in the back that I need. This is me. Probably shouldn't put this out loud, but I said that I want it done by August. They told me it can't be done by August, and I said it'll be done by August. Now, I guess now they're going to do the best they can. I have limited resources. I don't have an unlimited budget. And that's why I'm already looking at the load and the house by house that we're doing. Because remember, we're coming up getting ready for an election. So I can't just steal my entire election team and have them only work on one assignment, which they're doing right now pretty much. We're borrowing people and training people from other departments. But that's why I think the RFP, where we have some professionals that may be a little more knowledge, ability, and skills on this may speed things up. But I think if there are changes, I need to know what they are, and then in time to be able to notify the voters. There's some frustration. We had to send a notice out when I came in to several people who had been voting in Bullitt County elections for years. That said that we came in, we said, no, you're in Jefferson County, you should be voting here. Sometimes people aren't happy about that because they get used to voting in the precinct they've been in. So I want to make sure it's done with enough time to be able to reach out and send this note to the voters.
Have you spoken to the State Board of Elections and the Secretary of State's office about this?
Yes, so constant conversations. I've had we had a fruitful Zoom call with our local PVA and Secretary of State and Board of Elections, all of us talking about how do we better hone in on the lines. And the problem is we have several systems overlapping. And the resources and money haven't been put in that are necessary, and we're doing the best. Everyone's doing the best they can with what they have. Ultimately, it winds up to being a priority. If the elections, the integrity elections, are that important, if every single vote has to be in the right precinct, then the moral document is the budget, and it has got to be included in the state budget. And so we'll push into it. I know my colleagues on both sides of the aisle, this is important to them. As a legislature, I didn't get the chance to see behind the curtain. Being in here and working this position, I understand it so much better. And then having these issues brought up, and again, I really do appreciate the individuals, the constituents willing to call and talk to us, because this is one of those situations, if no one brings it to your attention, this is like a glorified Excel sheet, and there's no way of catching it. If somebody makes an error in 2021, until someone brings it to your attention, you don't, unless you go house by house to audit. So I appreciate the work that Jason Hicks and Roberto and other people who have come in to get this story. I appreciate the media being involved in this, because the only way that I think change is going to be effectually done is to get it out, and the people are going to have to demand it. I'm telling you, there is a problem. It needs to be corrected, and I'm hoping that we'll have the resources we need.
Will this change the outcome of past election results?
No. Of past election, and that's kind of funny that someone called me again in a race that was right around COVID time, and there was a lot of people upset about the way things came out. No, my job will never be to call balls and strikes. I'm not judiciary. Someone asked, does this candidate have the right to appeal? And our job is I don't put my finger on the scale. I will run the elections. I'll make sure that they're done fairly. I'm trying to be transparent in every regard of that. But any decision made as far as the bona fides of a candidate or whether or not a race was done right, that would be a judicial decision that I wouldn't make as far as past races. There are some precedent that has been set about when things can be challenged and whatnot. I know that obviously any candidate has the right to bring an action onto it, but I got to be careful not to put my lawyer hat on and give any legal advice to that regard.
Is there any indication that there could be additional House District 44 voters who were unable to cast a vote in that race?
Right now, the dive that we've done in with the resources that we have, and it is literally type it in house by house. We're down to 30 people who could have been registered to vote there, 8 who actually counted the ballot. Of those 8, 5 were actually registered Democrats. And the reason I bring that up, because it was a Democratic primary between the two candidates, and the vote margin was 5 votes. I use this as one example of the necessity to have this. There are other errors in some regard, whether it's a household, a split house, an apartment that is through a line, that have been keyed in wrong. We know that. We know that in talking to other clerks. I don't believe there's a county in Kentucky that doesn't have some errors the way it's set in, because people are constantly moving, changing, and it's not being updated in real time. What they say in most people, and even in other states, sometimes will say that's good enough, it's close enough. It's not enough to really change the outcome of the larger elections. Most of what they care about are your countywide elections makes no effect on it. Your federal, the bigger the race, the smaller impact it could have onto it. But I want you to think about when you get down to your local metro council races that sometimes that are decided by 20 or 30 votes. It is too important for us to take any chances. So yeah, we just found those. Now the individuals still would have cast a ballot in the precinct that they into it, but the way it was drawn, even though they should have technically been in the 44th House District, they weren't able to vote in the 44th House District, and to me that's a problem.
Did they vote in another House district?
Yeah, there wasn't another race on there for them to vote. So their ballot, and normally the precincts, the ballots are almost always, precinct to precinct are very small. So most ballots, there's not going to be any issue at all. You're talking about a percent of a percent. It is very small. I get it. But we made a promise of we will always strive to have more perfect elections, knowing that nothing can ever be perfect. But if there's a problem, then we're going to address it and we're going to resolve it. And they're telling right now, based the technology, one of the clerks said at the clerk convention, they gave me a box of crowns and demanded a digital map. And I'm looking at the resources they have throughout the state. And so this isn't just about Jefferson County. I'm going to go through, we're going to line by line, house by house, and audit and make sure everything is correct. We can do that. But this is a bigger issue. And the reason I'm doing this is because it's not fair to the other counties. They need help. And this is part of what we need to do to get the legislature to. We have systematic problems with our VRS system, our voter registration system. We know that. It's going to have to be digitalized, and it needs to be shared throughout the Commonwealth. And I want that done. I'll be pushing to get that done as quickly as possible.
These discrepancies are not going to affect the outcome of the 44th Democratic primary that we had in May.
Not to my knowledge. I believe that any candidate would have the right to file an appeal and go down a path, and I don't know what that would look like. I have not heard anything to that regard.
Just to be clear, these discrepancies, there's no indication that any of it was intentional.
No. Looking back, and to me, if I know there's a problem, people are saying, why do you have to figure out where it started? Why does it matter who did what? I think in order to be able to address a problem, you have to know why it happened where. So we did a very deep down. We actually found when it happened. It was after redistricting. I had just left the Metro Council to go to the Senate. Before the census, they came in. We brought in one of the individuals who had been a very important part of the redistricting to try to explain why this happened. He's been working around the clock with us as well. And it turned out that this particular street, this precinct, they decided to make a change last minute, just to move votes over. So it would have been sent to this office. It would have been assigned to one of the clerks who would have keyed it in. And it looks the way, because it's confusing the way the street does, because there's only one house on one side of the street and the other, so it was split up. And ultimately, it turned out it was just keyed in incorrectly. And once it was keyed in incorrectly, every single year after that, it's built on it. And so no election officer or person would have went to think that they're wrong, so they build on each other. So when I came into this office, I took what's a voter registration system that gets sent back to me from the state, which was ultimately sent to the state from Jefferson County. It works back and forth, and you assume that they're correct and you run on them. What I've found is they're not perfect. And so it's our job to work towards perfection.
What's that keying system like? How do they key that in?
It's like I'm actually watching them. It's more like a glorified Excel sheet. It is data technology. It is. And we know that's one of the problems right now with the office, is that we're working to modernize it. And we're doing that. But it's like doing a U-turn with that Titanic. We're working. I have to modernize the office at the same time, making sure we don't interfere with any of the government services that people expect. So we're doing it responsibly. This is one that I don't believe that can wait. So while we had hoped that we would have a year and a half to start looking about how we're going to get this systems updated, possibly looking at vote centers in the future, getting all these different possibilities in place. Now we're on a sprint because we see real problems, and I'm not going to sit back and let November election go through the general election and have people cast doubt on it because you might have a handful of people in the wrong precinct.
So just one letter or one number off could be the difference.
One letter of one number, or even the full street name not put in, or the way the lines are set up, or even they can put in everything right, but if they don't hit the second green arrow at one point, that could be a problem. Is what they were explaining. They think that might have been one of the issues. There's when they enter it, you got to hit a second time, and so when you're keying in and you put in front of somebody thousands of things to key in, I could see how a manual mistake will happen, and that's why it's so important. This office, I didn't know what to expect. And it's easy to point fingers when you're running for office, when you're doing things like that. The men and women who work in election center, they work hard. They believe in what they do. They believe in the integrity of the elections. They have fought so hard to do this. And for me to say, hey, over the past couple of decades, if anybody keyed in anything wrong onto it, that's unacceptable. That's what I have to say. But that's not fair to them. It's not to prepare to give them with the proper tools. And so what I'm going to do, and I promise I've walked back into them. They're working so hard. They believe in this. And right now, they feel like they got a black eye. What I want to tell is, I know you're doing the best you can with what you got. My job is to go out and get you something better. And so that's one of the reasons that to give the transparency what had happened, but also to make sure the legislature understands that every single clerk's office in the Commonwealth of Kentucky needs additional resources to do their job correctly.
Dave, do you know if any of the voters who cast a ballot in the wrong precinct knew that they were in the wrong precinct and or reported it?
No, I don't know that onto it. And what I've found is just doing after the primary, us talking, there's some people that were actually, we're limited the way the system has worked right now with all of our different polling locations, 205, the individual, a poll worker may mistakenly give you a wrong ballot at some point. And there was a few people that spoke up and said, no, I'm supposed to get this one, and it was corrected. I got that information back, which helped. And so we went through, and that helped us kind of draw attention and make sure there was no other issues. Because in the event you're given the wrong ballot and you vote on it, it's kind of no take back rule once you cast the vote. And to me, that is like one of the most important things for voting. And so even though they've been in a different one for 6 years, they were drawn in this area, and they were supposed to be represented in the 44th. And so it may seem like small potatoes to some people. If I know that there's any issue in one precinct, we have to assume that there's issues in others, and we have found them. And so we're going to continue house by house audit to make sure everything's right.
You kind of just said it, but are there any other errors that you're aware of in any of the precincts? And I guess since you kind of just said yes.
Yes.
Have you shared those?
Yeah, we'll right now what they're doing is they're flagging them. And so I have to, because what we're getting right now is what's called mismatch. So it pops up. And so we got to make sure it's not just our lines that are drawn, because for me to say it's wrong and the state say it's right, or the VRS, but it's this. So what we're doing is we're flagging everything that we see as a mismatch, and then we're going to sit down and do the deeper dive and say, is it correct or is it not correct? And I will share that as soon as we get everything back. I just don't want to be knee jerk. It's just because we see what we see as an error. It turned out, and I don't want to send a letter out to them when you voted in the wrong precinct. Turned out they did, and they updated.
I mean, could this be like a huge error, more than 8 votes or 5? Like, is this?
No.
Are we looking at something?
At most you're still looking at 1% of 1%. It's still small, but I don't want to minimize it, because 1% of 1% is too much. And we need to always be working. And going to this National Clerk Convention, talking to people, I know there's no such thing as everything being perfect. We know that. We know that there'll always be something. But it is my job to always strive for closer to perfection. And right now, we don't have the tools necessary to get there. We're going to do it all manually, person by individuals, piece by piece, house by house, and we'll get this thing as best we possibly can for November election. I think that we should be okay. But what happens after that? What happens is people continue to register in real time, and I don't want to have an office. One day when I leave this office, I want to leave it in a position where it can continue to be able to update it and make sure that every voter is voting in the right precinct, that their vote is cast, and that it's done correctly.
You said the candidates have the right to take action. What about the voters who were in the wrong precinct? Could they take action?
Yeah, I think that some of the history that we've seen is with a voter, as long as you have standing into it, I think we've seen that challenged. Actually, in some lawsuits right now at the Metro Council seat over with the bona fides and stuff onto it. But based on the advice and instruction of my county attorney, who's our legal counsel, has urged me not to give legal advice on that, because my job is to effectuate the elections and not to, because I think a lot of it's a gray area. of what they can't do, and a lot of that will have to be decided by the judge if they do. There's been some different local decisions, and so we can all look at the law and how that's been figured out in other counties in Kentucky. But as far as just like when they come in here, I'll let them know that, hey, I'm effectuating the elections. I'll lay out, give you, all the information you need, but I can't give you legal advice. And so that is actually the phone calls that we've given. That's kind of the response that we've had to give.
How would this GIS system that you're calling for help reduce the chance of errors being made in the voter precinct assignment process later?
When fully funded and properly implemented, they should integrate with the voter registration system, and so that we could they run and say, hey, if any change has been made today or this week, and it would tell you in real time that so and so moved here, this moved here, these people updated. When someone gets their driver's license updated. Now we can do that; it's keying it in, but there's no way of running. It would be an automatic audit, is what it would do if we could run programs with it. So the State Board of Elections, this is something they're really pushing for. In the Clerk convention, it was part of the whole, the PowerPoint, and then everybody got a gripe about what was wrong and why they needed it. As a senator, this is not new. We knew that you needed to do it. It just has to be funded. And I believe we have several champions. I think the president of the Senate, it's important to him. The Speaker of the House is important. Our governor has made it very, very clear that it is one of the bedrocks of our democracy, elections. So I think part of what I wanted to do this audit and go all the way through is so I can go to Frankfort and say, hey, I got the largest county of voters in Kentucky. I went through house by house. I've done an internal full audit. Here's where the issues are. Here are the problems. We need to have the technology and ability for every county to do that in real time constantly so things can be better. And I hope that will be compelling enough to be able to work to get it fully funded.
How many houses do you need to look at?
It's about 586,000.
It's a lot.
Yeah, it takes a lot. And that's the problem, is the way it has to be done as well. Because a lot of the past audits, the way that when it came up, even when we got some inquiries about some issues and stuff. Mr. Hicks had called the office and had asked questions, and we're pulling up the first thing, the street lane. Nope, everything looks good. Typing it in, everything's clear. But when you go in and click the individual household, it says a mismatch. So it's one part saying it's good and the other saying it's not. Well, that's problematic. So they're going to have to key it in twice, each one. So it is time intensive. It's a lot of households, and that's what they need to get the system. But right now, and I had to say that to this office, we have got to work with what we have. And I know it's like digging a hole with a spoon, and it's going to be time intensive, but it has to happen. We cannot take any chances of any of these issues happening in November.
For people who are reading or watching this and they're registered voters, should they check their registration and call your office if they think there's some kind of discrepancy? Or
always. First of all, especially with the change of the legislatures coming in, that anyone who's ever had their voting rights restored, anyone who had gone through diversion, there's going to be some people where they take the voter files and remove people from them, even though they really have the right to vote. And that'll be done at the state level through the AOC. It's supposed to go into effect. So they need to be checking. We want to make sure that every registered voter has the right to count their ballot. So absolutely, we're going to work with it. Any changes that have been made, they'll be rescinding notification from my office. Any corrections, and this will be something we're going to be fully transparent. If we believe that they've been in the wrong precinct, we're going to let them know, and here it is, similar to what we've already done. But to me, I thought this highlighted it because there was one particular race that came down to 5 votes. We were able to show that in a Democratic primary, that 5 different Democrat individuals weren't able to vote in that race. And again, on that one, that is Louisville Public Media actually sent that over. And to me, I just kept reading it going, that highlights what we're asking for. It highlights the need. It's another just to bolster, this is necessary and it can't wait till 2030 when after the census.
Is your office already getting calls since this story broke?
Yeah, it's actually, we had sent a letter over to the mayor's office, and I got yesterday, we got inundated with phone calls. So it did not take but a second, and just mostly questions. And my worry is there's misinformation. So someone can say that, for me to say that sometimes the precinct may be off or cut and they should have been assigned to certain legislative districts or council districts does not equate to the elections are wrong. That's the jump. And what I want to do is, as we strive for more perfect elections, that we should always be doing, as we strive to make things clearer and make sure that every single household is where the lines are arbitrarily drawn, whether it's by the Metro Council or the legislative body. When we do redistricting, we know the gerrymandering goes into it. But once it's put in place, that's where they should vote. And to me, it's just making sure we comply with those lines. And so I don't want someone to take this, and you'll get that, oh, it's all rigged. Did they do it on purpose? Are they doing these things? And right now, where we have all the criticisms towards our democracy, I think it's important that this office remains extremely transparent. And right now, we have videotaped and gone through every process of our elections to show that we do every safeguard. We're going to be putting that out there, kind of saying, here's all the checks and balances. Here's how you know it's bipartisan. Here's where the election machines are stored. Here's how it's checked. Here's the eye-to-hand recount, every piece along the way. Well, to me, this is just another part. And so if I see any issues whatsoever, I'm going to be transparent with it. We'll talk about it and we'll work to address it.
Do you have an estimate right now about how many households could be potentially impacted by this?
No, and that's right now. We just began we started our audit immediately after the primary, where we saw a couple issues. What the audit was, we didn't realize it needed to be a household by household. We were doing street view audits, coming in, going, that looks right, that looks right. And then once this was brought to our attention, we realized even though the street view in my audit was saying it was fine, if you click on the individual household, it was saying mismatch. So since then, we've been going around the clock, but we don't know. I mean, again, you'll have 2 or 3 of them that will do all day long and not find any issue at all. And that's what's happening over and over again. But there's no way to know until we get through them all.
Did your office do any degree of auditing of the voter precinct assignments prior to the May primary?
No, as far as the individual audit, knowing that I inherited voter files from voter registration system that they had already voted 6 elections in, I had no reason to believe that they had been wrong. What we had done is we worked, because of the mapping and trying to get our polling locations where they're equally out, so we would pull up the street view, so which would have gave us indication had there been a GIS system or something in place that was wrong. But as far as the house by house audit system that's going on in place, no. In fact, I don't think that's ever been done, ever, in the history of Jefferson County. But we don't have any other alternative right now. And so it is important for me to tell my office again, I know they're working late, they're working hard, and this seems just, it seems like a lot of just keying in over and over, day in, day out. But I think it's important, and I also think it's important that the constituents know what this office is doing to make sure it's right.
No more questions at this point?
Anything we didn't ask?
We're going to find out. No, yeah, I think this office does so much. If you look at it, the county clerk's office is involved in people's daily lives as much and touches as much or more than any other government agency. But one of the things that I think is our core responsibility is running these elections. And so what I am doing is I'm taking from the rest of the whole office, and we're working to make sure this is right now. but it's not fair to this. That's why we're reaching out saying there's got to be better technology. There's got to be additional resources.